Andrea, let's start with you. You were able to break the news to the DNI in the moment. Vladimir Putin is coming to the White House. Your reaction to that and the interview as a whole, it was remarkable.
Well, what was so remarkable was that, first of all, he honestly did not know that Putin had been invited. He acknowledged that he would certainly recommend that there not be a one-on-one again without no takers, that he did not think it was a good idea, still does not know what took place in Helsinki in that private meeting, has not been fully debriefed. There have been some comments by the president, but they don't fully know and don't know certainly how to counteract what is being said in Moscow. He said that he did not know in advance that Foreign Minister Lavrov from Russia and Ambassador Kislyak were going to the White House that day. So you have, he said, a president who came from the private sector, had never been in government before. There were a lot of things that this intelligence community has had to deal with. He certainly welcomed the clarifications post-Helsinki. He said that he stood up and made the statement that he made after that news conference because he felt he owed it to the intelligence community, that that is his job. That's the job he signed up for, to explain honestly what the assessments are from the intelligence community. He made it very clear, Katie, that nothing happens in Russia without Vladimir Putin, as he described it, the former KGB chief, knowing about it, directing it, being in charge. And while he did not say that, that contradicts what another cabinet secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, said earlier to our own Peter Alexander, where she was expressing sort of ambivalence about whether it was really Putin in Russia. He stuck to the intelligence assessment of 2017, said it has been revisited time and time again. They have assessed it, reassessed it, and that is their assessment. That is their report to the president, to the American people, that it was Vladimir Putin and the Russians who were attacking the American election.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.